All right, and welcome back. In today's lesson, this is going to be very fun. We're going to connect to a database instance. So we have a database that we've already created in AWS, and so we're just going to connect to it. That way we can see the data that's there. We can do queries. We can understand the structure of our database. We can do a lot of interesting and fun things. So first, you got to connect to your database. And one of the tools that I use to connect to my database is SQL Pro. And the software for SQL Pro can be found at sqlpro.com. You download SQL Pro on your machine if you're using a Mac, and that will give you this wonderful application called SQL Pro. And in SQL Pro, we basically just enter in all of the information that we need to connect to our database, and SQL Pro does everything for us. We can also save the information. That way we can connect to our database without re-entering all the parameters. So let's get started. So the name, this is optional, and basically this is just naming our database for our favorites. So whatever we decide to do, we're gonna basically, we're gonna save it so that we don't have to re-enter it every time we want to connect to our database. So as you can see here, I have a endpoint here. So I'm on my AWS console under my RDSs for the Northern Virginia region. So what I really want here is I want this endpoint. So I'm going to take my IP address here, and I'm just going to copy that over. Once I copy it over into host, the name is actually going to populate in the name field. So I'm just going to get rid of that, and I'm just going to say tutorial. Okay. So now my username, and for this particular example, I'm using the username of root, and I have a password here. And I have my database. So I'm just going to type in my database name. And typically, you use port 3306 for a database. And I'm going to add this to my favorites. So here, tutorial is added to my favorites, and now I'm going to just connect to my database. Let's see here, something is a little off. Let's see here, maybe I have the wrong, oh, I know what the issue is. So if you look here, I have 3306 at the end of my port. I need to get rid of 3306 right here. I'm going to save those changes and now connect to it. That should have worked, but that's okay. Let me get rid of 3306 from the IP address. 3306 here. I'm going to save my changes. And now, voila, I've connected to my database. And I can see here, so I have some, I can see the structure. I can see the field. I can see if it's assigned. I can see if it allows a null value. I can totally and completely configure my database from the SQL Pro tool. I can look at the content. I can look at the relationship between various variables. I can look for different triggers. I can, of course, see the table information and the raw SQL in order to create that table. And I can also see my query window. And just like that, I can connect to this database. So I'm just going to log out there, come back in, and as you can see here, I have my favorite here called tutorial. I just double click on it, and voila, I'm into my database. And that is how you connect to a SQL database from AWS. Have a great day.